Well, hello, welcome back to another episode of Tattoos and Toddlers. So, I am just so fortunate that I get all these amazing inquiries that come in, and I never know where they're coming from. And it just so happens that this one is a little closer to my travel home, the Massachusetts area. So, I want to welcome Karen to the podcast today. Welcome, Karen. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for this conversation. So my name's Karen Sarmento. I am, as you said, from Massachusetts. I'm a nurse practitioner and mindset mentor for women and CEO of Sarmento Mentoring Services. That's my company. But yeah, I'm just excited to be here and have a great conversation with you.
Yeah, and we were talking just for 5 minutes before, and I typically do this if I don't know somebody and I just kind of like, let's just get into it. Whenever you're down for organic conversation, that's my kind of deal. I love this podcast because we have the freedom to sit and talk about anything we want. And I really loved what you brought up right before. You said you have a 19-year-old now. I know things were probably different over the last bits of years where you said you were doing a job you're like I feel empty inside, and then now I feel like I have the ability to move into something that more passionate about. I want to dive into that because that's such a great conversation for all of us to hear today.
Yes, it's one of my favorite things to talk about because
Yes.
it's so life-changing when you
Hmm.
really tune into your that inner voice and
Yes.
actually kind of shut out all the outside noise and start to listen to yourself.
Yeah.
Because for so long I was just doing everything that was expected of me and another degree, another job title, it was all about the wrong things. And it's like one day you sit back and it's like, wow, I've got everything, but so why do I feel so empty inside
Yeah.
still?
Yeah.
And then it's
So, yeah.
actually acknowledging that, like, yeah, I think I have a greater purpose, or I think I'm missing my actual calling. And I had a great career. I really
Yeah.
did. I still do. I'm a nurse practitioner. I
Yeah.
loved the job itself, but something inside me was still looking for something more.
Yeah, and what was the turning point for you specifically that what I guess you could say the light switch turned on? Was it something that just like all of a sudden one day you're like, oh my God, I get it now.
Yeah, that's such a good question. It is because I know a lot of people probably feel this like, yeah, that's all grand and great, but what do I do? What do I do
Yeah,
about
like
it?
yeah, what do I do about it? How do I know anything going forward?
Yes. I went through a really dark period in my life, probably about 11 years ago. And through that, I got introduced to personal development. And that took me down a route of really looking back at myself. So when I finally decided that I take accountability for everything in my life, so all the results in my life are not because of anything that's happened to me, not anything that's happened in my life, not that anything anybody's done or said. It's all me. I did the dive inside, and
Mm.
that's when I realized, wow, huh, I can do things differently. And that's when I started to do things differently. And it's an awareness, like really going inside and asking myself, what do I want? And what parts of my life light me up? And what parts of my life drain me? And I'm just doing them because it's either A, expected, or people pleasing, or for whatever reason, validation, getting another degree for what?
Yeah,
So what,
I love
which is
that.
all, yeah.
For
And
what?
yes, because it's okay to get another degree
Yeah.
if you want that, but if it's for
But if it's,
yourself.
but if you're questioning, and here's the thing, I just did an episode recently where I was talking about that childlike wonder and awareness and curiosity and asking questions. And I feel that most people, they don't know where to start because maybe they were like you and they're like, they wake up one day, they're like, oh my God, my life has led me here. All of these things have led me to this place. And oh, I don't think I really want to be here. I think I want to take a different path. And then it's like, well, what do you do to start the process to go another way? It's like,
Right?
it's that truth telling of where you are and stopping long enough to ask those questions is what I have found for sure is that if nobody stops to ask questions, when will you ever know?
Yes.
Right?
I love that you
I mean, it's just like let's pause for a second. Like if you don't ask the questions, how will you ever know?
I
And this
think you
is your
just hit the
personal
nail on the
journey.
head.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. I feel like you just hit the nail on the head with that because we don't stop to pause and actually allow there to be a moment of silence or a moment to just say, huh, why am I doing that? Or, huh, do I really want to do that? Or do I really want to go there? Or what do I want? We just get on the hamster wheel and just keep reliving the same day over and over again. And we don't pause to ask, what do I want?
Yeah, and this for me, this is I'm pretty new to all this, I've been doing a lot of cool work recently for myself too. But I have found the empowering things to ask questions and even just before we got on, I'm very organic and I very much talk about this in real time. I wrote on my Facebook page, get a piece of paper, write down everything you're afraid of right now in this moment. What are you
Mm.
afraid of right now in this moment? And see where that leads you because that could lead you to the truth that you are afraid to embrace something new because you're simply scared, or maybe you don't realize you have enough resources or you don't know have the right connections or all this other stuff that's all like you can list them out and just be like, okay, I see you. You're probably a legitimate fear, but then where do I go from there? So for you, when you were making these shifts in your life, what were some of the steps that you started taking to like kind of like start I want to say turning your path. You didn't probably do a 180. You're just like, let's stop here, redirect a little bit like our GPS, right? Like a little GPS, and then start a new path. What was that kind of like for you? Like the hard work part of it.
Absolutely. So, one of the hardest things for me to do was to start to trust myself and to
Ooh.
trust my own thoughts and my
Hmm.
own intuition. And also just trusting the process. So not getting so caught up in the 100 next steps that I need to take to, say, start my new business, but just trusting that the whole process, each step is going to be delivered to me as I need it, and to take that very first step. And even if it's just a conversation with somebody or um, I don't know, doing a Facebook Live or whatever it is, just taking the step and trusting that I don't need to have all of the how it's going to happen. I just need to take some action, an aligned action, what I feel called to do,
Yeah.
and trusting myself. And also, you mentioned about fear. It's so, what I found for myself is it's self-imposed. And I, when I feel fearful, I kind of question that very first thought that comes right after that. I'd like to do X, Y, and Z. And then what's that little gap that takes place right there? Why I don't do it? What's the
Yeah.
thought that's it's
Yeah.
coming in? And it's really powerful because it's usually a self-worth issue or a worry what everybody else is going to think. And it's all those things that come up that I've created in my mind. But when we do the thing that's scary, that very thing gives you so much power. It makes you so much stronger. And then you come out on the other side.
Yeah. There's nothing like that feeling of everything like I don't know even how to explain it. I've never been to a chiropractor, but when everything like comes in alignment and the everything is flowing the way it needs to flow and like you're not, believe it or not, I feel like the more aligned you are, the less stressful it gets. Because it's like you're trusting the process and you're trusting the internal guidance of where you're going. And so for you, when you were probably having to deal with some of this while you were still parenting, right? Like you're parenting a smaller child, a younger child. What was that dynamic like trying to figure things out while also, with your kid?
Yes. So there was definitely a balancing because he's like it's my favorite person in the world. Um, But it's definitely a balance. And I know I had a lot of mom guilt along the way. You always feel like you're not doing enough, not doing enough. Also self-imposed. But on the flip side of that, that was sort of my why, because I'm always telling him, you can do anything, or you can be anything you want to be, or think big. And at one point, I remember thinking, geez, I'm not even doing that. Like, what? How can I expect he's going to do that if I'm not even setting that example?
Yeah.
So that was always always put a little fire in me to sometimes do things that were scary and to really make my vision big.
Yeah, and that's you actually just brought up another point that was interesting to me because, I'm a little, I've been alive for a while. So people always used to say that to me, okay? So they're like, well, if your dream's not big enough and scary enough, or if your dream's not big enough, or if it doesn't scare you, then it's not big enough. And I never really understood that, mostly because I hadn't yet walked through anything that was way bigger than myself.
Oh,
And 5 years ago, I did. I finally got scared
okay.
about something bigger than myself. And I thought that that was, because people can say a lot of things to you and you can get a lot of information. But when you have, we'll call it a transformational experience where you're like, oh, this is what they were talking about. When it's something that's so beyond you where you have to have help and you have to have guidance and you have to walk into things that lead you to where you're going, with more than just being alone. I started a new brand called Weirdo Weddings, so it was very much an isolated thing that I did that I hadn't done for my whole career as a photographer. But when I said it out loud, maybe you dealt with this too, but when I said it out loud, I immediately like got the good nervousness, but was still scared about it. But I was like, no, this feels so right. And when you're talking about the intuitiveness and listening to the inward, that was for me my biggest shift. Did you also have that thing where you're like, oh my God, this is so big, I can't wait?
Yes, that is so good. I love it. And how it made you feel inside. You
Just
just
felt
knew.
like, whoa, like what just happened? I've been alive for a while. Why did it take so long to get here?
Yes. And it's like when they say, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. You can hear something a million times
Yeah, yeah.
and it hits differently every time. And if you're not ready for that piece of information, I've read books at one stage in my life and then read the same book 2 years later. I'm like, wow, I don't even remember that. It's like totally a different book. I did have one of those moments, and it was naming my company. I was
Oh,
coming up with all these different names: Shine
yes.
Transformational Coaching, or She this, She whatever Wellness. And somebody said to me, well, you're the company. Why don't you have your name in it somewhere? And I sat with that for a little while. I'm like, so then I ended up coming up with Sarmento Mentoring Services. And I'm like, oh my God, could it really be my name? And I
Mm-hmm.
think there was like a worthiness issue in there, like, "Ah, that's so new and so exciting." And I absolutely fell in love with it because it was something I'd wanted to do for so long. And yeah, it just felt so aligned when I made the decision.
Yeah, and it's so funny that I know I had the opposite, which this is wonderful good business 101. If anybody's listening, some of the hardest things you'll do is name your business. It's just like naming a child. And you're just like, you'll go back and forth forever and ever on it. I've done it 3 times now. So I'm just like, and every time I've done it, it's been more specific and it's been more me every single time. And so the Weirdo Weddings was like the most me it's ever been.
Ah,
And, but it's like, it's so interesting that the amount of energy it takes to get through that naming process. And then as soon as you hear it out loud, you're like, ah, that's it. No, so I did the opposite. I didn't want my name in my businesses.
mhm,
And because I knew that it wasn't going to be my path, and that's the only way I can explain it is that I feel like my name, I'll be still in my business, but the name that I create is something that could live on beyond me. So
mhm.
that's kind of how I looked at it when I started. This was like 18 years ago now, but it's like When I started, I knew it was a mission. I knew it was a call. I knew it was something that was beyond my capabilities. But yeah, going through several name changes is like naming your kid several times. And
And then that's even interesting because for the person out there or for the listener that's
yeah,
thinking they're getting caught up on that step, oh, I gotta name it. Like
yeah,
you can name it and down the road you could change it. As you
yeah,
change, the name might change. So to
it's true. And you know what? You just do it on the back end with the paperwork. I mean, it's just
Mhm. It happened with my podcast too. I delayed starting my podcast for so long because I was hung up on the name, and maybe there was more to why I was holding it up
yeah.
aside, but I let it be that the name was holding me back, and
Yeah.
so
I
it
love
doesn't
that
have.
too because, even naming this podcast it came from inspiration from other people, which was great because you see something happening in the world and you want to talk about it, but sometimes for a podcast, you kind of have to have a name maybe. So when I came up with Tattoos and Toddlers, it was literally because I have a whole bunch of tattoos and I was having conversations about them. But then also I was reminded of what life was like for me with a newborn in the first 2 years of business after having a newborn. And so the toddlers aspect is that parenting meets that duality of I love my job, but oh my God, I love my kid. Like, how do I make these choices?
Yes.
So when you're thinking about business, it's like, sometimes the simplest is okay. The simplest answer is okay. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Do you find
Mhm.
that when you're, sitting with people and mentoring them and maybe the people you've met along your lifetime, do you see the same things popping up when you're talking to people and having conversations? Because I don't know if you're like me, like we end up talking about similar things. Like even today, we're talking about those internal things. So is there some things that come up quite often for you when you're working with people?
Absolutely. Probably one of the most common things that comes up is people not seeing themselves as worthy of more. They can
Yeah.
see it in other people,
Mm-hmm.
admire another woman for doing X, Y, and Z, but in a million years couldn't see themselves as being able to do that.
Yeah.
And that most women, I only work with women, but this certainly could apply to men too, most women that I see something in them and they do not see it in themselves.
Yeah. Their
So I
vision's
can
a
see,
little clouded. Yep.
yep, worthiness issues, and just, um, yeah, beating themselves up a lot, getting hung up on a past, or that seems to come up a lot too. So they let a past issue define them, and not allow them to just be a brighter version. Playing small, that sort of
Yeah.
thing definitely creeps up all the time.
I can
Worthiness
understand.
issues.
Yeah, I can understand the worthiness part too. I know I had a season of my life for sure that I was going through that. And and I still see so many people in my life that they will do everything in their best energy for somebody else. And I know I do it occasionally, but
Mhm.
not like where it has stopped and halted my mission or my business or anything like that. Like I haven't let my self-worth drive my future.
Mhm.
Whereas a lot of people or their self-worth is that's their only bubble, so they kind of stay in this little bubble and they never go beyond it because of that label.
Mhm.
And so it's been so interesting to watch how and I always learn, I don't know if you do the same thing, but I always learn a little bit more about myself when I see other people struggle a little bit. And then I want to look at myself when I see that, whatever that struggle might be. And even if I've already felt like I've walked through it, I still want to look at it and ask questions. Do you ever do that?
Help me understand that a little more. So when
Yeah.
somebody else is going through something,
Say you know somebody in your life, it doesn't even have to be a client. If somebody in your life is going through something, you see them going through this pattern, and then you think to yourself, even if you've walked through it, do you kind of like go reflect a little bit on, huh, I've seen this pattern before. I should probably think about this for just a second. And
Oh,
where does it apply to me today? Does it apply to me today? Have I walked through it? You know, because you're about the mindsets and the shifts and things like that. But I
mhm.
find that when I'm around people that are constantly doing the same thing over and over again, I often ask myself, what is this pattern that is there something I need to ask myself, even when I'm responding to them? Like, right?
Yes. Yep. Why is this? Yeah, sometimes I'll even say, why is this showing up in my life over and over again? What what about me is attracting this same situation over and over again?
Yeah.
Maybe I need to figure out, yeah, what I'm doing to attract this person, even if it's a client. Maybe it's, what am I supposed to learn from that? Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I find that and I think that's why I love having conversations because you never know where they could go and when we learn to listen to each other and where we are and who we are. And like I said, even my trip up to Massachusetts, I told you I had so many different friends that I wanted to see, but there was no way to see everybody. But the
Mhm.
conversations that we got to have when I did get to see everybody was just so fulfilling. And it was so nice to just, be who I was without any of the labels, not business owner, not wife, not mom, and just
Mhm.
take all the labels off and just be who I am. And how does that look like in your life? Are you able to remove all your hats every once in a while and be like, I'm just Karen today?
Yes, that was something I had to work on over the years. And I finally feel like now I can. Um, I felt over the years like that was some I wasn't always authentic to myself. I would,
Yeah,
depending on where I was, kind of morph into what would fit into that situation. And the whole authenticity piece, it's so liberating and it's so freeing. And you used the word alignment earlier. When you feel in alignment, when you're being authentic to yourself and you're in alignment to where you're going and what you want, everything feels so much better.
yeah.
I think it's having those healthy boundaries so you're not doing things that you don't want to be doing and you're not saying yes when you're really meant to say no, I don't want to go there today or I don't want to do that today, and being okay with it because you're true to yourself.
Yeah, and
And
I was gonna say I liken this to, and I was just telling this to another friend of mine. I was like you've given yourself 20 tasks, but maybe your internal voice said to only do five of them. So
Mhm.
you've overloaded your schedule, you've overloaded your brain, you've overloaded your output instead of the input. And I like going back to that because then I have to ask myself, did I put too much on my plate today?
Mhm. Yes, and giving yourself permission to change it. You know, something, I'm only going to do the
Yes.
first most important five things on my list today, not all 20.
Yeah, and it's like I did the same thing with traveling up there to Massachusetts, and me and my friend, we just had the best conversation about, you know what? If we get two-thirds of what our dream list was, we have to be okay with the one-third kind of falling off to the side. Because it's just, there's nothing you can do. We only have so much time, literally,
Hmm.
on in our lives. We only have so much time. And so you got to be okay with, hey, maybe it is only the two out of three things that I really need to focus on and just let that one kind of fall to the side. And that's okay too, if
It
that's
is.
something that you need to look at.
And especially if you're present and really enjoying the two things that you did get to do, and you're really present in that and enjoying it versus pushing through everything so you can get all the things done, but you're not really even present or enjoying the things that you
Yeah, you're
are doing.
constantly looking at your watch, like, okay, I've got 5 more minutes. And
Yep. And checking boxes. I always talk about checking boxes like, okay, that's done. That's done. Did that. And like not really connecting to any of it.
yeah, it was so interesting. Yeah, because that's just one life example recently where I was like having to evaluate in the moment, like where do I really need to be right now? Who do I need to be with right now? And how is this going to unfold? Well, it ended up spending hours with a family, right? And then I got to have dinner with them. And then it's like, then all of a sudden, like the day is over. And I was like, oh, I guess I have to go home, go back to my Airbnb now. But like that stuff like that just really excited me. And I really was just, I left so much more thankful than, and I was proud of myself for not trying to fit everything in because I just knew going in. And I think that's what shifted for me, anyways. Like, and I'm sure you see this a lot in yourself and in people that you work with, but when something shifts, it's a nice bright and shiny new skill.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's the greatest feeling when you feel like you're in flow in a day like that, where it's just like, wow, I'm really enjoying this person's company in this day.
Yeah, it was just such a beautiful thing. And, as we're starting to think about how do we translate all of this, I want to go back to you and your kid though. Like,
Mhm,
now that your kid, you says 19, right?
mhm.
How have you seen your kids shift and change through your shifts and change?
I see that he has definitely, he doesn't have those people pleasing tendencies that I had,
Mm-hmm.
which warms my heart.
Aw.
Um, Definitely his own person. He's got interesting goals and not real big long-term plans yet, but like week to week, I he's got visions of and his gears are always turning. And I don't remember thinking outside the box like he does. So I think what we kind of emulate and how we show up, we teach them so much. And I have to tell you, at one point early on in my personal development journey, somebody had said to me, um, you know what, you don't fix in yourself, you pass along to your kid anyway. And I just remember it was like a punch in the stomach. It was like gut wrenching. Like, wow, I'm gonna mess up my my kid like forever. So that was a motivation to work on myself and to make sure I'm always showing up as the best version of myself. And I make mistakes. And when I do, I own them. Even if I make a mistake with him, I always will say, geez, God, I probably would have done that differently or whatever it is. I'm always accountable. And
Yeah, and for me that started young. I would apologize for something if I went off on something and felt like I needed to apologize to even my 4-year-old at the time. I would do it because, there are going to be tons of things that I've worked on, but there's still tons of things that come out?
Mhm. I
So
think that's such a
yeah, as we're rounding out our conversation, what can we leave people with today that will continue to encourage them and motivate them to move into this new shift or this new path that's forming in front of them and they're not quite sure what to do with that. Um, what should we leave with them with today?
I would say to when you get that little subtle whisper, that little nudge inside that maybe you're meant for more, or that maybe there's more to me than what I'm actually doing, to actually listen to it and take time to be in a little bit of silence so that the outside noise isn't weighing in so much on what you say or do. Never underestimate what you're capable of and to trust the process. Don't worry about the how so much. Don't look too far out, but trust the next steps and to embrace the fear, to kind of walk through it, walk into the fear because that's where the change happens. I really believe that.
I love that. And I'll just add on that, and for everybody listening who is still figuring out their path, there are so many different paths and they all look different. And I like to share it. I'm a visual artist. So sometimes your path is walking through the city, and sometimes your path is walking down a beach with ocean, the waves sitting at your feet. And sometimes it's a staircase, and sometimes you might be winding around a mountain. But those are all valid pathways. And realize that where you are now may not be where you are in the next season. So my thing is try to identify where you are right now and then just be open for what's next. Like she said, let's listen to the inner voice, let's listen to the inner nudges. Sometimes the most simplest idea is the answer.
Beautiful.
So we're gonna say goodbye for today, but Karen, thank you again for coming on today. I'm gonna make sure that people can find you in our show notes. Do you have a website?
I do. It's KarenSarmento.com.
Excellent. Well, we will look forward to seeing you again maybe sometime in the future episodes as we talk more about mind shifts, mindsets, all the good things that come with me not editing this podcast.
No, that's great. That's awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I
You're
enjoyed the
very
conversation.
welcome. All right, stay tuned for the next episode, everybody.